Alright guys, welcome back to the next video in my Redux mini series. And so what we're going to talk about today is now that we can set our current user, we can become this user, and then we can go to my profile and see that data here. Now we've got to talk about what happens if I actually click the update button. And so you can see that I've got the user data here. Well, I've actually implemented a functionality in the form component where when you click this button, it clears out. And so that's why now it's empty. But whatever's in these fields, it gets updated. And so I go here, click update, and now it prints. And so we've got to talk about what are we going to do with that data, right? So what's happening is when this submit function runs, it's calling this function and then it's printing the user right here. And so this is not in any way a full stack tutorial or talking about too much into backend or working with an API. We're just focusing on Redux right now, so I'm not going to go into how I built the API or anything like that. But this update user method is actually updating the user. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this submit function, and then I'm going to say, sorry, this is not the actual update. This is maybe a poor naming convention, but this update user that I'm pulling in from my API, this is the actual method that updates the user. And so now in this submit function, I can say update user, so that is now referring to this, and it takes in I believe a user. Where is it? Update user takes in an ID, the user or the body, and the callback. So the first thing I need to pass in is the ID of this user. And so we have that here with, let me go ahead and use some destructuring to get this current user. So const current user equals this dot props. Remember, that's being passed in here. And so now I've got the ID of that current user. And so I'm going to say current user dot ID. And actually, I could even destructure this one step further. Say this dot props dot current user, except this is an underscore. That's the way it's coming. The data's coming back. And so I'm going to actually just call this ID rather than have to worry about pulling in the underscore. So what that's doing, this syntax is, this refers to whatever is going to be the key of this object. And then now I'm renaming it because I don't want to have the underscore here. That's just a personal preference. It would still work if I had the underscore, but I'm just going to do it without. So now the next thing is passing in the new data. And so I'm going to pass in the user, and then now my callback, and that's going to be this dot update user. Let me go ahead and delete that console log. And so now if my API works, then whenever this update user function runs, in the response from the server, I'm going to print the response here with update user. And so let's see what we get. So let me go home, become this user, go to my profile. I'm going to change my name to Bob, click update, update user, and there it is. So it did update. But the problem is if I go here, if you notice, it didn't change. If I refresh the page though, now it does. So that's where now we've got to do something with that data that we get back, right? And so there are two approaches that you could take with this. One approach is we could say, okay, now that we've got this data back, let's call the server at that API/users route and get all the users again and then update our list. That's one way that you could do it. However, that's pretty heavy on the server, potentially. If that's a really big query where you're getting a big set of data, you don't want to have to get all that data again just because one thing changed. And so in the next video, we're going to talk about how we can take this user and then simply just update our Redux store rather than having to make another big call to the server.